Louisville fans were really happy with the hiring of Jeff Brohm. So Marcus Satterfield ends up going on to Cincinnati, and then they end up hiring Jeff Brohm. Now, Jeff Brohm was a huge hire for Louisville football. This is somebody who was a star quarterback for them during his playing days for Louisville, led them to a good amount of success during his senior season. He also was somebody who played high school football around this area. So you have a hometown guy who knows this area, knows the expectations that comes with coaching at Louisville due to being a player there, and plus, Louisville already wanted Jeff Brohm to be their head coach back in 2018, but he turned them down when they were moving on from Bobby Petrino. So you bring in Jeff Brohm a few years later after he turned you down previously, and I think that the expectations for Louisville are pretty high considering the fact that this is Jeff Brohm entering year one. Now, why are Louisville fans so optimistic about their new first-year head coach? Well, JT, is because he's an alumni here. He's somebody that's well-respected amongst the fans. He's somebody that's going to be well-respected amongst the boosters, the alumni base, and that is true, but you also have somebody who understands the importance of beating Kentucky. And we already know, if you're a Louisville Cardinals fan, doesn't nothing make you even more mad than losing to Kentucky the way that you have the last couple of years? So you have a head coach that understands how to recruit this area, how to succeed at this program, but you also have a head coach that takes pride in beating Kentucky. You know, Marcus Satterfield, for the most part, he was on the hot seat for fairly most of the year until Louisville was able to turn it around late. So for Jeff Brohm, you're going to have somebody coming in here that's going to galvanize this fan base. And I think he's going to be able to galvanize this team right away, right out the gate. Now, they did lose a good amount of talent to the transfer portal, but they also bring in a good amount of talent via the transfer portal. They had the 14th ranked transfer portal class, according to 247 Sports. And there's going to be a lot of guys who they got in the transfer portal who they need to make big impacts this season, especially on offense, because you only return 4 starters on offense, 2 of those being on the offensive line. You also got a receiver and running back that returns from last season. And on defense, you got a good amount of starters who come back. You have pretty much all of your secondary that returns from last season. And when you look at some of the key transfers that Louisville brought in from the transfer portal on offense, obviously we got to talk about them bringing in Jack Plummer, who played for Cal last season. Prior to transferring to the University of California, he spent his first couple of years at Purdue under Jeff Brohm. So you already have a QB who knows the system. All he really needs to do is build some timing and chemistry with his new receivers. And he was somebody who had 21 touchdowns to only 9 interceptions playing for Cal last season. So imagine how good he can be with Jeff Brohm at a school that has a better supporting cast than what he had to throw to at Cal. And when you look at your wide receiver position, you return a starter from last year who was really productive, but you also got 2 really good receivers out of the portal. You got Keon Coleman, who comes from Jackson State. He played for Coach Prime last season. He had 33 catches for 510 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, and Jamari Thrash. Now, Jamari Thrash is one of the best players that entered the transfer portal from a G5 school. He was the 13th ranked transfer portal wide receiver, and during his time at Georgia State last year, this dude was damn near the only thing that Georgia State had at offense at times. 61 catches for 1,122 receiving yards, 7 receptions that ended up resulting in touchdowns, and he was averaging 18.4 yards per catch. So Louisville, they got a pretty solid QB. Jack Plummer, if you were to rank all of the starting QBs in the ACC going into this year, you got Jordan Travis. You also have Burkert, who comes from Virginia at NC State. I probably will rank Jack Plummer in the top 5. Okay? You got him, Tyler Van Dyke. So Jack Plummer should come in and be a really good starter right away for Jeff Brohm. So you're going to have your quarterback position taken care of. I think you have more than enough talent at wide receiver. And then when you look at what they bring in on our offensive line, you got left tackle Eric Miller. Now, Eric Miller has started at left tackle previously at Purdue under Jeff Brohm. So this is somebody who, like Jack Plummer, is going to come in, already be familiar with the system, and he should be a plug and start guy right away for Jeff Brohm week 1. Now, I think when you look at what Louisville has offensively, they should be really good this season. I don't really think they're going to struggle on the offense side of the ball at all. I feel like under Marcus Satterfield, however you pronounce his name, I don't really feel like this offense was all that great under him. I feel like a lot of this offense was based on Malik Cunningham just go back there and run around and make plays. I think with Jeff Brohm, you're going to have a more efficient offense, and you're going to have an offense that's going to be way more consistent than the offense that you've had under Marcus Satterfield for the last couple of seasons. Now, this defense is probably the biggest concern for people who don't really keep up with Louisville. Well, JT, like, how good is this defense going to be? Like, we know this offense should be fine, but Louisville, who do they have coming back on defense? Well, they do return pretty much all of their starters from the secondary last year. Plus, they add a lot of depth in the secondary from the transfer portal. You got guys such as Storm Duck from the portal who's going to add to the depth and talent that you have at secondary. So I think that Louisville should be pretty fine on the back end of their defense. But when you look at what they have on their front seven, that's kind of where my concern lies. Now, their defensive line, they do return a good amount of depth there. They also did pick up a couple of transfers that I like. Jeff Clark from Georgia State. You also have Stephon Heron, who had 5.5 sacks at Stanford. And the defensive line, it's not that I don't think they have talent there. They do have talent. They do have guys who can get after the quarterback. But my problem with their defensive line is that I don't know if they have a lot of depth there. If they have one or two guys who ends up going down and having to miss some time with injuries, I think they're going to be in trouble. And at linebacker, I think you have talent there, but you have unproven guys there who are going to have to prove themselves. So this offense should be fine. Their secondary, I think, is going to be the strength of their defense. Their defensive line has talent, not saying that it doesn't, but I don't think they have a lot of depth. So how good and how many games will Louisville win in Jeff Brohm's first season? Well, I think that this is a team that, best case scenario, if everything goes right and they don't have a lot of injuries, they could win 10 games. Their schedule is not that tough. They got to play Georgia Tech, Murray State, Indiana, and Boston College before they get into the meat and potatoes of their schedule. So they should be 4-0 going on the road into that game against NC State. And NC State is a game that you have a good chance at winning, so you could be 5-0 before you have to play Notre Dame. And the good thing about playing Notre Dame and some of the better opponents that they face this year is that they have to do it at home. So you're playing Notre Dame at home, you play Duke at home, and you play Kentucky at home this year. So 3 of your biggest games of the season are all at home. You don't have to play Clemson. You don't have to play FSU. And I think that your most difficult road game this year is probably going to be against Miami. Now, Miami, I am a Miami Hurricane fan. I know I'm bold as hell for bringing that up this year because the Miami Hurricanes have not been that good the last previous years. But you look at Louisville, they're a team on the rise with Jeff Brohm, but so is Miami with Mario Cristobal. I'm pretty sure Mario Cristobal is not satisfied with how his first season at UM went, and I definitely do expect my Canes to be able to turn things around. And I'm not saying that Miami's going to win that game, but it definitely is going to be a really tough game. Miami does have a really talented team going into this season. Louisville, they do have some question marks with how this offensive line is going to look, how much depth they have up front. So that could be a game that could go either way. So my worst case scenario for Louisville, if everything goes left and they just struggle year one under Jeff Brohm, I think they end up winning only 6 games. Now, my overall record prediction for Louisville this season, I'm probably going to have to go with 9 wins. I think this team is capable of being able to win 9 games. I was close to having them winning 10, but I think 10 would be a little bit too much, even though I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up happening. But I think that Louisville, with the fact that they don't have a tough schedule and the fact that they did do a really good job at addressing the areas of concern that they had via the transfer portal, like I said, you never know how your offensive line and defensive lines are going to play out when you end up bringing in a lot of guys via the transfer portal. Like, you just can't plug and play guys on the offensive line, even if they are highly touted coming out of the portal. Like, having a good offensive line also comes down to more than just talent, but you got to have good communication. You got to have good chemistry. So you wonder if everything's going to come together on that offensive line fast enough for it to end up being good enough for them to be the team like Notre Dame, or being able to be the team like Duke or Miami that's really good up front. Maybe Duke may not be all that great up front as a school like Notre Dame and Miami, but if you're going to pull off some of these upsets, you need to be able to hold your own up front. Now, if you're a Notre Dame fan or a Duke fan or a Kentucky fan, you should be really concerned if Louisville is an underdog going into the week that they play you, because there's a reason why they nicknamed Jeff Brohm the upset master during his time at Purdue. This dude was 7-11 against top 25 opponents, and he was 3-1 against top 5 teams. And we remember what that Purdue team did to that Dwayne Haskins-led Ohio State team. So if you're any team in the ACC and you got to see Louisville and you're a favorite going into the week that you play Louisville, you better watch out, because the upset master just may get you again. But in all seriousness, I think that Jeff Brohm is going to have a really good season at Louisville. I think this is an 8-9 win team. They don't have a tough schedule. Now, if they were playing some of the better teams in the ACC, like a FSU and Clemson, I don't think they will be able to beat those teams. There's some people that think that Louisville could compete for the ACC championship this year. Not a lot of people, but a small group of people who believe that. I don't know. I think that's a little bit bold. Like, could they make it to the ACC championship? Potentially. I think there's a strong possibility that they could, depending on what happens with Clemson and FSU. But for the most part, I think this is going to be a 9-win team. I think they could end up being ranked in the top 25 at the end of the season, somewhere along the 20s or 25 range. But let me know what your first year expectations are for Jeff Brohm at Louisville down in the comment section down below.